On behalf of the Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones and the stewards of Glen Park, I want to welcome everyone attending this Zoom meeting today to recognize and honor Tom Small. My name is Paul Alexia, and I am especially pleased to have this opportunity today. Tom has been a close friend, a co-worker, a colleague, and a mentor to me and many others over the years. He has been a variety of ways in which he has touched many lives. And we are pleased to have and grateful to have a number of those people who will be able to join us today and speak on Tom's behalf. The accomplishments and contributions he has made are too varied and numerous to list individually. But we hope that we are able to get a brief sample of those from the high regard in which he is held from some of those people who have known him best. I'm sure there are many others who would like to be able to congratulate him and add their good words, and there will be an opportunity for that later on. The major organizations represented here today owe their deep gratitude and loyalty to Tom for his numerous contributions and wise advice over the years. Years ago, Nancy Small mentioned that after retirement, Wild Ones gave her a second life. I feel very much the same way. And with my more recent opportunity to work with the stewards of Glen Park, that second life has been even further revitalized. I believe we have a collaboration that will benefit both organizations, and in a manner characteristic of Tom's efforts will improve the environment of Oakwood-Winchell neighborhood. Tom has been and continues to be a major source of inspiration, guidance, environmental understanding, and botanical knowledge. And he has served as a light for the future of environmental improvement. This entire community, city and county, and beyond continue to benefit from his involvement and leadership. I feel particularly personally fortunate to have this opportunity to recognize and thank him for his friendship, his leadership, his kindness, and his generosity. A couple of announcements. The Zoom session will be recorded and posted on the Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones YouTube channel. And for attendees who wish to do so, we encourage you to make comments in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. Those will be recorded and made available to Tom at the end of the program. It's not surprising that we have quite a few number of individuals who are willing to testify, eager to testify on Tom's behalf today. And we have asked our speakers to try to confine their remarks to 5 minutes or less in the interest of time. Ilse and Ann, you want to go ahead then with the bench?
As Paul said so eloquently, today we are honoring Tom for his many contributions to environmental sustainability in our area, including landscaping with native plants. We are doing so with this bench to be installed in Glen Park, a pocket park located just a few blocks from Tom's house. The seat and back of the bench are made from recycled plastic with a 50-year warranty. And we will have a plaque, and the plaque is cast bronze. The bench will be assembled and installed by the stewards of Glen Park by setting the legs in cement in the ground. There will be an in-person on-site dedication once the bench is installed this spring. And last but not least, funding has been provided by Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones and individual donors. We thank them. Thank you.
Okay, then I think we are ready to begin with our speakers today. Our first speaker will be Jessie Davis. Jessie, will you introduce yourself?
Paul, she messaged me to say that she is recovering from COVID at the moment, and
Oh,
so
okay.
she doesn't feel able to speak at this time.
All right.
So
Thank
perhaps you could say a few words on behalf of KWEL at the end.
you.
In-house
Well,
bed.
the local chapter of Wild Ones owes its life and blood and breath to Tom and initially Nancy for getting it set up. There is no way, there is no list long enough to list all of the things that Tom had done to create this chapter and to keep it vital and keep it functioning. His footprint and handprint are all over it and will remain that matter. It's the goals that he set out continue to be the goals of this organization. And as I expressed earlier, I'm so fortunate to be able to be associated with this group and to have Tom as a friend. It's a great honor. Then Karen Larson, who I know is here, is the next person to speak.
As Paul has stated, Tom's reputation reaches far and wide from the Wild Ones to Western Michigan University, the local theater, to the best role I know he's ever done, working with children and students. It's not often that you find children ages 5 through 12 sitting mesmerized by the romantic poetry of the Victorian era. And yet, when you sit at Tom's feet, anything is possible. I'm Karen Larson. I'm a member of the Stewards of Glen Park and have been blessed many times over by you, Tom, in a variety of ways. Kalamazoo's Parks and Recreation reached out to the Kalamazoo Committee to have volunteers adopt a park and care for it. Glen Park has called an amazing group of people together, including Tom, to be its stewards. Glen Park is a city of Kalamazoo pocket park located off of Kensington in Oakwood neighborhood. The stewards are helping to return this area to its natural diversity and allow the land to be more self-sustaining. Glen Park is part of the wildlife corridor that is critical to the wildlife that are linked by Asylum Lake and Kleinstock Preserve. Any of you are welcome to join us for work days of removing invasive plants, creating trails, and planting native species. If you have not walked this land yet, you will realize it's a place to observe nature and see Earth's history. The slope that runs along the Parkview Drive was carved by the glaciers. The valley floor is a perfect example of a glen that at one time was probably covered with glacial melting waters that probably ran down the valley and into Woods Lake. When you stand at the height of the slope, where the bench will be placed, you will feel the silent beauty that lies out in front of you. It's a perfect location for quiet meditation and to watch the earth move through her seasons. Each of the stewards of Glen Park have commented on the beauty of this area and how they get lost in the mystery of the land. Glen Park has a soul that touches each person deeply. It's a special area that has been set aside to be a passive recreational space that will serve as a learning lab, as well as for quiet contemplation. For me, Glen Park in many ways mirrors who and what Tom stands for in this city and our future of our natural areas. There is no greater way to honor Tom than to do the work that we need to do. We look forward to you joining with us in celebrating the world as we are creating it together from here on out by the example of Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Our next speaker is Bill Snyder.
Thank you, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks so much for inviting me to say a few words. Nothing could be easier or more enjoyable than to express my appreciation for Tom. Many of us have had the experience when traveling to arrive at a destination at night or in a storm, only to realize in the light of day, you are at the base of the beautiful mountain. That is how I would describe my introduction to Tom. I distinctly remember seeing Tom and Nancy at a WHAM conference many years ago, hidden in plain view, the mountain. Someone pointed them out to me, told me some interesting and flattering things about them. They looked fairly unassuming at first glance, but I got to know them and watch them approach the WHAM conference as fact-finding coalition building experiences, collecting building materials to create bigger and better things. I would describe Tom as an idealist, not in the pejorative sense that we often use that word, but my definition of idealism is imagining and aspiring to do something virtuous which seems impossible to others. Tom does not accept the impossibility, but certainly sees the obstacles, but is undeterred. More importantly, he has taken his idealism and brought people together to realize many lofty goals. Today, Tom is being honored by the Wild Ones chapter for all the hard work and leadership in his community. All the foundational work Tom has put into the chapter has made it the most active and, in my humble opinion, the best chapter in the state. This is not only his own hard work, but the hard work of many amazing members in the community, many of whom are here today, that were willing to hop on the bus. The word leadership is already been used repeatedly when describing Tom. Leadership is not measured by the holes one person digs and plants, or the seeds sown, or the checks written, although those things are important. Leadership is the ability to draw people together towards a common goal. If that's not magic, I don't know what is. Tom possesses the umami of community organization. We all know what leadership is, but can't quite describe it in words. I've closely watched what Tom does, but more importantly, how he does it, which is the secret sauce. One of many things I've observed and admired so much about Tom over the years is whether you share his point of view or not, he acknowledges everybody in the room. He understands getting something done is not about forcing your own personal view on another, but looking outside yourself and working towards common goals. I, of course, know Tom through Wild Ones, but knew him before there was a chapter. This chapter is an important example, one of many examples, of how he weaves his activism and leadership into action and real change. Tom, thank you so much for your friendship, mentorship, and I look forward to this spring sitting with you and Ruth on this bench, enjoying some time together, telling a few stories, and then getting up and getting back to work. Much love.
Thanks so much, Bill. Our next speaker is Mike Klug.
Sorry about that. I'm Mike Klug, past president of KWOL, and my wife Carol was also past president of KWOL. Well, I believe I met Tom back in, I think it was around 2006, 2007, when I gave a tour of the long-term ecological research site at the Kellogg Biological Station. Tom had brought a group out there for a tour of the research operation. During that tour, I talked a lot about what we were doing on research associated with soil microbial communities. Subsequently, Tom invited me to give a talk to the local chapter on soil communities. Carol and I joined the chapter shortly afterward after finding such a dynamic group of individuals that were very like-minded to what we were doing at that time. Little did we know that a few years later, Tom would be recruiting Carol to be vice president of the chapter, and following that, the two of us became co-presidents. As many of you know, it's very difficult to say no to Tom. Tom's passion, his activism for the environment, has been a constant inspiration for us to stay active in the chapter and to continue to spread the word about the importance of backyard biodiversity and native plants. Thanks, Tom, for the journey.
Thank you, Mike. I don't know whether Tyler Bassett is here today or not. I did not see him. Tyler, please speak up if you're here.
I can confirm that he is.
Okay.
So I was, I'd say, directed or pulled into Tom and Nancy's sphere at a very impressionable age, at a very vital time. I was I believe I was 22-year-old late college student studying biology and beginning to flirt with botany. And I'd say that I came into contact with them at just the right time to you know, it changed the direction of my life. Like, and that's not an understatement. I'm not one to, I don't tend towards hyperbole. And is because of the guidance from Tom and Nancy, and then subsequently Ruth, have really made just such an intense impact on my life. So I first met Tom. At first, he was a boss, quickly became a mentor, and that developed into friendship. And he continues to be a mentor and a friend. I was one of the many young, strong-backed people that helped out in their yard. And at first what I thought was just going to be a cool job where I could learn some things, and it certainly was that times 1,000. It because of who Tom is and who the people he surrounds himself with are, I learned so much more than that, and it made a profound influence on me, in part because he and Nancy at the time, you know, they were living about something bigger than just, you know, the things you do day to day. That I learned from them that every action is not just about the action that you're taking in the moment. It's about everything that it's connected to. And so the simple act of removing an invasive species or planting a native plant in a yard, there's beauty in the simplicity, and I learned that from them, but also that it's connected to something much larger. And I think that I was at the right age to receive that kind of, not just in words, but also in action, just to see, here's one way you can live life. And I've attempted to carry that kind of living in as I've grown into a much older adult at this point. That's about half my lifetime ago, and the majority of my adulthood ago. And so I learned a lot about living, and I learned about the importance of mentorship as I grew older, and it became, you know, you're never aware of what's happening at the time, especially when they're that young. But as I grew older and realized the profound influence that had on my life, it's encouraged me to be a little bit more patient and focused, and recognize when I have an opportunity to be a mentor to somebody, because I value the direction that pushed me in as a person that was interested in plants. But, you know, I could have gone any number of directions, which would have been pretty cool too, I'm sure. But I really, really love the direction I've gone, and I've been, you know, immersed in the world of botany and plant ecology ever since. And I'm still immersed in it, and I still love it. And I owe it in large part to the influence of Tom and Nancy.
Thanks so much, Tyler. Well spoken. Is Steve Cato here today? I did not see him as I scrolled through. Apparently not. So our next speaker should be Lad Hanka. You're still muted, Lad. Well, regrettably, I don't think we're going to be able to hear from Lad today. Ilse is another person on our list.
So I first got to know Tom and Nancy when they and I were on the stewardship committee of the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy in the mid-90s. That was just when the stewardship committee was starting, and there were no Wednesday warriors yet. My next recollection is being at their house with the living room, the dining room, and the entryway crammed full of chairs, and hearing about their proposal to form a Wild Ones chapter in Kalamazoo. In retrospect, I would say it was a super spreader event for native plants. In addition to having co-founded Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones chapter, another of Tom's major contributions to the preservation of native plants is the completion and publication of, in 2011, of Using Native Plants to Restore Community that he and his wife Nancy had started before she passed away. As the subtitle indicates, the book is highly useful for establishing native plantings not only in Southwest Michigan, but far beyond. The book is beautifully illustrated by local artists, and we may hear from Lad Hanker later. One lesser known fact about the book is that the proceeds from the sale were used to establish the Nancy Small Memorial Fund. This fund was used to establish native plantings in Kalamazoo and adjacent counties. To the best of my recollection, plantings were established at 9 schools, the farthest away being South Haven. Another 16 were established at parks, nature preserves, community gardens, churches, and even a hospital and a food bank. The plantings were registered as Monarch Waste Stations, and the Nancy Small Memorial Fund paid for the waste station signs. As with so much, COVID brought new projects to a halt, but I think the fund may not be completely exhausted, and another project or two may be in progress. Nonetheless, plantings at 25 locations so far is very impressive. I believe that of all the projects, the school gardens have the greatest potential for nature education, not only in the years they were established, but in years to come. Thank you, Tom, for your vision and its execution. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you who joined this video, the Zoom session today, and especially express my gratitude for the speakers and the wonderful comments they had to say about Tom. There is not enough, in my opinion, that could be said to acknowledge all of the things that he has done. I want to thank our speakers especially. I also want to express my gratitude to Ann Fraser, who provided valuable assistance in the implementation of this program. And furthermore, I sincerely want to express my deepest gratitude to Ilse Gebhardt, without whose hard work and good advice, this event would not have been possible. Thank you all for attending today.
Tom is going to say a few words, I think.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for being here, all of you. And to all of you who couldn't be here. And thank you for your words, which touch me very deeply. I feel a lot of gratitude because nothing of what you have spoken about and nothing of what you have in your hearts and minds, I think, about anything I may have done would have been possible without the rest of you. something that Tyler said resonates very much with me, that it's the connection to something larger than the immediate project or the immediate concern or even the immediate relationship that makes the difference. And it's that kind of connection that the rest of you have enabled. And particularly that you all have helped me to realize in an ever larger sense of the community of life. That includes all of you. And that includes all of the plants that we work with and all of their relationships to other plants and to the creatures, including us, that depend upon them. And it's that larger community of life that I have tried to communicate with and communicate to all of you about. I am, the chapter could not have happened, and the work of the chapter could not have happened, or at least would not have happened in this way without Nancy, and it wouldn't have happened without all of you. And I'm particularly grateful for the sense of continuity that you all have enabled. In the past 2 or 3 years, I've turned increasingly to this next phase of my life, one of more kind of contemplative action and writing, and still doing some speaking. But increasingly letting go and letting the rest of you carry forward the work that we all started. And I'm so grateful for what you have enabled and the continuity and the future that you have worked so hard for and enabled to have happen. I'm grateful to a larger community than simply Wild Ones. I think that the Friends community in Kalamazoo, several members of which I see here today, have been a very important part of my life in leading me to a view of and a practice of nonviolence towards all of life. And particularly the organization that I continue to work with, originally the Friends Committee on Unity with Nature, now called Quaker Earth Care Witness, and for whom I continue to write. And even though I say that I'm turning more to kind of a life of contemplation and study and not quite so much hands-on activism, I can assure you that you haven't seen or heard the last of me yet. I will be continuing to write and to speak and to meet with you and to welcome all of you into continuing in our lives, my life with Ruth now, here, in this place, and in this time. A life of I hope, continuing to give back in reciprocity for everything that I've received and that we've received from all of you and from the plants that have been so important a part of our lives, and for whom I feel ever greater connection and ever greater realization of the greater wisdom of that community of life that I and Ruth are simply one part of. And the city and the community and the neighborhood and the wild ones and the larger Quaker community are all a part of that ongoing life of the community. And for all of that, I am very, very grateful. And I thank you very much for this day and for everything that this day represents and all of its continuities with the future and with the restoration and preservation to which I think we have all committed ourselves. So I guess the last word, the best word is gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Your words are very touching. As far as I know, that brings our program to an end. Again, thank all of you for coming. For me, this was a wonderful experience, and I appreciate all your input and attention. And I hope we can see you at our next Wild Ones meetings. And please, if you get a chance, visit that lovely little Glen Park. Thank you, everyone.